Welcome to the Mostro Podcast. I'm Kim Bingham, and today we have a pretty inspiring episode lined up for you. Joining us is Suz Paulinski, who's been a cornerstone of support in the music industry. As the founder of the Rockstar Advocate, Suz has turned her personal trials and professional experience into a powerful mission, helping musicians manage their careers with an emphasis on personal well-being. She's also the inspiration behind our event, Music for Democracy, which is rescheduled to the weekend of September 28th, not on Labor Day weekend, as I mentioned in the interview. Go to musicfordemocracy.net for more information. Let's get into my conversation with Suz about music, mental health, and how community can support freedom of expression. Thank you so much for being on podcast with me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. Now, I'm just going to start off with a question about your background in law and the transition that you made. So could you share a bit about your journey from law to a life coaching for musicians and what inspired that transition?
Sure. So I actually started in the music industry and I was working at record labels and I very quickly burnt out. It was an insane couple of years. And so I took a break and I thought maybe I would just leave the music industry for good. So I actually went and became a paralegal because I was always interested in contract law and copyright law. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll just start, I'll work as a paralegal. Maybe I'll go to law school. But working there, it was amazing. I learned so much. But my bosses were like, you don't want to go to law school. Like, don't do this to yourself. It's just a lot of, a lot of work. And sometimes it's not as glamorous as you want it to be. And just don't go to law school. So I said, all right. But then I really wanted to get back to working with musicians. And I was working with some friends. They were independent musicians in Brooklyn. And I thought, okay, well, how can I best support them? And so I had some businesses with my college roommate over the years. In my early 20s, we had done consulting and we even had a record label and we did a little bit of management. And I decided what I didn't want to do. And then I thought, okay, well, I can help with writing bios and doing social media plans for MySpace and Facebook and things like that. And then I thought, you know what, I'm really interested in psychology. Maybe I'll go more into the mental health realm. So I went and got my master's in psychology. And at that time, artists were like, listen, like, we think what you're doing is great. It's admirable. But like, I'm good. I'll have a few beers before I get up on stage or I'll smoke some weed. And I don't really want your help in this area, but like, thank you. But it's just not my thing. And I would reach out to different music conferences and things like that. And they were like, nobody wants to hear about this. Like, thank you. Good luck with that. But just getting every door slammed in my face. So then I thought, okay, well, how can I help? And, as I'm sure when you're an entrepreneur, it's like you can have a plan, but if the audience isn't ready for that plan, or if they're just like, don't understand it, then you have to figure out, well, what is the pain point that they're hoping I solve for them? And so that's when I became a coach for time management, because I thought, okay, they don't want me helping them with their mental health, but a big piece of their anxiety and or depression and or anything else that they were dealing with was connected to the fact that there's just too much to manage in a day for any independent artist. So I thought, okay, I'll work on a time management piece. And as they begin to see that I can give you all the time management tools in the world, but if you don't have the coping tools to, manage your emotions and understand, how everything is connected, it's not going to go as far. So I did the time management coaching for a while and I really enjoyed that. But as right before the pandemic started, I realized, okay, I need to really get my license in therapy because I knew that's where I wanted to take it. So during lockdown, that's what I did. And here we are.
Amazing. So how long were you running? How long were you doing how long had you started the business before you decided that you wanted to, before you pivoted and
Sure.
during lockdown?
Sure. So I started in 2014 And so it was about 6 years before I decided like, okay, now's the time I want to pivot into full on mental health support.
Okay, which is where Rockstar Slackers came out of that.
Yeah, right about Rockstar Slackers came out in 2018. I guess that was kind of my like testing the waters, seeing how I could better support artists with just check-ins throughout the week, seeing how they're doing and having that support in a way where they could afford it. Because there were starting to come by 2018, more coaches were starting to come out in the industry. And yeah, I mean, coaching can be expensive and they're, artists couldn't always afford a private coach. And so I thought, well, what can I do as a group that I can support multiple artists at one time, but still give them that feeling that, okay, it is one-on-one, but it's also in a group dynamic. And so, yeah, that's where Rockstar Slackers came.
That's great. And so let's just be clear here. It's summer 2024 and Rockstar Slackers is on hiatus, let's just say, right? And
yeah.
You plan on what's the plan for Rockstar Slackers for those?
Yeah. So I realized that I have to walk my talk. And for my own mental health, I had to close Rockstar Slackers because 2023 was just a whirlwind of change in my life. A lot of personal and professional changes happening all at once, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it was just too much for me to process. And so I thought, okay, let me pause this because I can't help people if I'm, trying to figure out myself. So I took a couple months off. We paused it in end of January. And so the hope is that by the fall, by September, it's back up and running. So that's the plan.
That's great. Well, I can say as someone that participated in Rockstar Slackers that it's a really great resource. So look forward to having it back. And for those listening to sign up and check it out too when it's back on. So let me ask you, you've dedicated your career to helping artists manage not just their careers, but their overall well-being. So how do you see this approach influencing their artistic output and longevity in the industry?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think the trick there is to let go of the myth that if you're not in pain or if you're not struggling, that, then your art can't be that great. And I think we've all been sold a bill of goods. And myself, I am not an artist, but as somebody who worked at the record labels, there was in, the early 2000s when I was there, this ongoing kind of messaging of like, oh, are you tired? Oh, is this a lot? Well, welcome to the music industry. That's what this is about. And it, was this whole sleep when you're dead mentality. And it took me many, many years to trust that that's just not true. That you can not only do great work by resting, but you can do better work by resting and taking care of yourself. And I think a lot of bigger artists are coming out and admitting to that fact. I remember somewhere in the early aughts, Missy Elliott came out and said, I've stopped, relying on smoking before getting in the studio to create great music. I've gone on a better diet. I've stopped partying late at night, thinking like that's how I have to get my experience. And that's where I have to get all my inspiration from. The inspiration is in here. And so I think by tapping into it, the key is when you're able to work on yourself and you want to play the long game. The game is, well, yeah, I love creating music and I want this to be a career. I don't want this to be a job that I did for a little bit and then, okay, that was it. And if that's your thing, cool. If it's something you just want to try out and say you did, that's fine. But for the musicians that I work with, that this is their life's work. And you want that life to be long. Being a part of the 27 Club is not all it's cracked up to be. You don't want to be gone from this earth at 27. And so I think the key is you can create great art after you learn to manage your emotions and your mental health, because people think, well, if I work on my mental health, those emotions will no longer be there. And that's not what it is. You're able then to tap into your emotions in a way that you can manage it and tap into it when you need to and let it go when you don't need it. And I think that's the key, is to just become more in tune with your body. And that's where the inspiration comes from. So I think it's just learning how to reframe that narrative of, well, if I'm suffering, then my art will be better.
Yeah, that's actually the question that one of the interns on the team had for you was, how true is the narrative about the tortured, medically addicted musician? How true is that narrative?
Right. I mean, the narrative really ends with, at some point, your body's going to call it. Like, at some point, the body's going to say, okay, that's enough. And we think, or I think many artists thought for a while, well, if it gives me great art and I'm gone from this earth early, at least that'll be my legacy. But it's like, but you don't have to trade that for that. You can still have great art and create a great legacy and be here to enjoy it long into your lifetime. And I think that's really the key to understand.
Absolutely. That's great. I want to ask you about your role in online communities like Redefine the Hustle, just one of your wonderful online endeavors. What are the common challenges you see artists facing today, and how does community help address the challenges that artists are facing?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. I think that, artists, and really any entrepreneur, and all artists, entrepreneurs, I think it's a very lonely, career to build. I think you do feel like you're alone on an island where, you're working by yourself. A lot of the times you're wearing multiple different hats. You don't start out with a big team around you. So it's just, every decision you make on your own, every, result from that decision is on your shoulders. And so it can feel very isolating. Especially when it's in music, if you're not an entrepreneur in, tech or entrepreneur in like other industries that are more palatable or understandable to mainstream, to a layperson. When it's music, then you feel even more isolated because, I know that if I had gone into finance, my parents would understand what I was doing. And so, you become the Chandler Bing of your friend group, of your families, where they're like, oh, they do something in music. They don't really get what you do. They don't really understand what it's like. Some might say, oh, you're just playing. You're playing. Like, what do you even have to complain about? It's art. Like, how difficult can that be? Because they take it for granted. They just turn on Spotify and they get to enjoy the finished product. And there's no full understanding of what goes on behind the scenes. So it can be very isolating. And one of the reasons I started my community and I started like Rockstar Slackers and things like that is because I realized artists needed to know they're not alone in their struggles. I was getting client after client that was afraid to tell me how they felt because they were like, oh God, this is so embarrassing, but this is how I feel. And I'm like, yeah, the 5 clients I had right before you all said the same thing too. And they're like, really? I said, yes, like there's nothing wrong with you. It's just so common, but nobody's talking about it. And your friends and family can't empathize. So you feel crazy. And it's completely natural to feel how you're feeling. And so that's why I think community, especially in the music industry and in entrepreneurship, is important, because you need to be reminded, oh, this roller coaster is normal. Okay, this is imposter syndrome. This is what it looks like. Oh, okay, this is decision fatigue. This is what it looks like. Oh, okay, I'll be fine.
Yeah, I can totally agree with you on all those points. I can tell you that it was amazing, the response that I got when I hosted a creators club on Patreon, singer-songwriters club that I started, and I think we had 50 signups, and it ended up being like, there was a good dozen people that showed up consistently at the meetings I think we're having them every 2 weeks. And the relief that everybody felt at just being able to share all the pressures that they have as independent artists was just priceless. Just to be able to exhale and say, I burnt out on all this, and have that forum was just, and that people feel, it's difficult to admit that you're feeling fragile in some way professionally. And as an artist too, we're supposed to always be shiny, bright objects and, or whatever our identity or persona is. So yeah, I can totally, it's endemic. It comes with the career, and, it's great that you've created a space for that exhale to happen. And that actually, so that's kind of leading to where I want to go with this exhaling and artists being able to express themselves. And mental health, but mental health, social media, the whole thing, and it's also tied in. So, okay, this is a bit of a strange question, but I'll ask it. In your experience, how does mental health affect musicians' ability to engage with and impact their communities, particularly in political or social realms?
It's a great question. I think the biggest thing is, that I'd heard this when Clubhouse was a big thing. A quote that I had heard somebody say in a room I was a part of was, share your scars, not your wounds. And there I've seen many artists kind of reach burnout or reach a place where they can't take things anymore. And rather than step away or shut the computer down or put the phone down, they share it with their audience. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You can absolutely be transparent, and a lot of artists have a very tight-knit, bonded relationship with their fans. I think it's great to be transparent. However, your fans are not your support system. They can make you feel great. They can give you a purpose. They can make you feel like, wow, my music is really impacting people. That's wonderful, right? And they give you hopefully an income, right? That's the goal, that they can support you in the fact of there's this exchange. You're giving them your art. They're giving you, their money and their investment, their time, their attention, and then it can continue, right? But when we look at them as, well, they'll make me feel better, that's a lot of pressure to put on fans. And then it was almost like the therapist-client relationship. Like then we have countertransference, and it can get a little dicey. And so, you might have some diehard fans being like, "Oh, I'm here for you. I'll listen to you. I'll, support you through this." But you're going to have a lot of other fans being like, "Okay, I'm trying to figure out my own life, and I don't know what's happening here." Like your fans are not trained professionals to help you get through a situation. And so when your mental health is being managed by the same people who are supposed to, your fans, it's a very delicate relationship. And in many ways, it's a very unnatural relationship. It's a great one, but it's this, oh my goodness, let me send you all this love and support, and this is so great. But when you do something they don't like, or when you let them down, or when it's a negative thing, it's not like you and a friend where you kind of go through natural ups and downs. It can be very debilitating, and it can be very difficult to process when your fans feel disappointed by you. And so you can go from really high highs with them to really low lows very quickly at times. And that's not the type of relationship to go through the delicate ebbs and flows of your mental health and your mental well-being. So I say all that to remind artists they are your fans. And while they might feel like friends sometimes, they're not your inner support group. You have to have a separate support group, whether it's a professional therapist, or it's a hotline you call, or it's friends that you rely on, or there's a family member you can talk to. There has to be another team that's not all about lauding you and telling you how amazing you are and just giving you the, oh my goodness, you're amazing, keep giving me that art. And so when you get into social and political realms, it's totally fine to state your opinions and put it out there and share your beliefs and find your audience. It's okay to draw certain lines in the sand that matter to you. But as an artist, again, you have to offline figure out, what is my messaging? What's important that I share? If your music isn't very political, if it's not really based on certain values, you can have your personal beliefs elsewhere. Because if you're going to draw 50 lines in the sand for everything and it has really nothing to do with your music and it's not really connected to the impact you're trying to have, it's going to get very messy. And if you're not clear and feeling good with your mental health, the attacks you will get for some of the beliefs that you have, you better be ready to handle it. And now you've made it no longer about your music or the messaging or the impact you want to have. You've taken it now to another realm. And again, it's like sharing wounds and not scars. It's rather than sharing something in hindsight, you're sharing something in real time, and you're going to get those real time feedbacks from your fans. And it can be extremely overwhelming. I've seen artists just completely fall apart because they didn't think it through before they shared certain viewpoints or opinions. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying you have to be really ready and clear in why you're sharing it with your fans. What is the reason that you want to put certain things forward? Because it can break you down, truly.
Yeah, well, that's actually, it's kind of interesting because we're seeing this actually at the time that we're talking now. There's some French elections that have been called here in France, where we're based. And basically, there are artists and influencers that are speaking out and they're naming a particular party to vote for. They're getting pushback. If they're talking about voter participation, they're getting less pushback. So that's just an interesting thing that I'm noticing here. I think it's just the question is, how can artists be taken seriously when they express their opinion and that they're not just perceived for looking for attention and looking for views, on a particular hot topic of the day.
Right. And I think that's the key. I think the thing is, as you said, when they're talking about voter participation, hey, that's a cause that they're getting behind. When they're talking about vote for this particular person, that's a viewpoint that they're pushing on their fans. And so that's fine. Like, there are some people that are like, well, listen, I have a platform and I'm passionate about this and this is how I'm going to use it. And if they don't like it, they can leave. Hey, that's totally fine. But if that's what you're doing, you will isolate pieces of your fan base. You have to be ready for that. And I think, especially in terms of being taken seriously, people understand it and people accept it when it makes sense with your brand messaging. So if you've been this poppy, sort of fluffy, fun, artist and you make a lot of club music, I'm not saying you can't have a political opinion or share things, but you have to acknowledge the fact that your fans are going to be like, whoa, you just did a whole 180. You've been pushing this happy-go-lucky, fun, escapism for me. And now you're in my face about politics. So why should I care what you have to say? Like, it's definitely then, oh, okay, you want certain views or you want to, push some buttons on something. If you're somebody, when you look at like, I'm just using U2, for example, but when you've always been, you're like Chuck D, like when you've always been an artist to talk about politics, to talk about, world issues, to talk about what's going on, and how it's affecting people. Sure, I'm not saying you have to be at their level, but if that's the type of music you're using, if that's your brand, that you've always been somebody to be like, hey, I want to shine a light on this issue. Yeah, you're going to be taken more seriously because people realize that's why they've been following you to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. I think of Willie Nelson also, who's an artist who's been like since the internet, also supportive of farmers. So is it sustainable for artists to speak out about a topic that has nothing to do with their music?
I think they can. It's the way they approach it. So, I wouldn't come out the gate and just start, making all of your content about a certain cause. You can have a conversation with your fans. You can, share other people's content who are more reputable in terms of experts about a certain topic. You can, and test the waters, see how your fans react to that. You can say, I mean, I've seen artists come forward and say, listen, I've been making music in this type of way, or I've been, kind of interacting with you guys in this type of way, but I've done a lot of self-reflection. And now there are certain things that are really important to me. And I want to explore that as an artist, transitioning them into this is what I'm doing. I think if it's just for a quick season and people want to get behind something, I think you have to be a little careful because it can feel gimmicky. It can feel like, people are just like, why are you doing this right now? Is somebody paying you to do this? I think that's where the disconnect comes. If you've never talked about it before, or if you've never shared your views about something before, I think it's about just opening up the communication with your fans, letting them know why you're starting to explore this, what they can expect from you moving forward. You can say, listen, I'm really passionate about exploring this type, I want to explore more of the political realm. I want to become more of an activist. And this is where I see myself going at this point in time. If this is not the type of content you're looking for from me, I understand and I respect that. But if you want to come on this journey with me, this is where I'm going. Just being transparent and having that conversation rather than, hey, here's what you've gotten used to seeing from me. I'm just going to do a 180 and start going here. And, because then you started to break their trust a little bit, not because they don't agree with you, but because they're coming to you for a specific reason. And now without notice, you've changed that reason on them. So it's just about managing expectations, I think.
I understand. Well, I think this brings me to the event that we are hosting on Labor Day weekend, which August 31st and September 1st, which is an international live stream Twitch train called Music for Democracy, which was inspired by a conversation that I had with you. So we are on the team. We are slowly organizing the welcome for everyone that's going to come in and participate in this. And we don't know at this point whether it's going to be a small amount of artists or a lot. We really can't tell. But why can't we tell? Because everyone's so tied up in knots about the issue of democracy and peace and equality around the world. When I called you and asked a few weeks ago about how, you, a music industry professional that I respect, I wanted to ask you how you wanted to contribute to the community. And you said to me to something to the effect of that artists are having a really hard time with the political situation. And I just went, okay, well, let's just, my major things, well, let's just give them a platform to express themselves. And let's not have everyone just show up and sing their songs and say their little bit or not or whatever. And that's it. The way we all artists used to get together in the good old days and put on a show for a cause. So this one is for democracy. I wanted to ask you about, I may have just rushed ahead and started this event. I didn't ask you anything else about it. I'm like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. And so here we are. But I wanted to ask you about why. What is it what's going on with the artists? Please tell me.
In terms of why they're struggling with this?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think they're afraid of turning fans off. I think, that's what I love about what you're doing, because you're giving them a platform. You're giving, when you invite listeners and fans to come be a part of this, you're telling them what this is. Like, we are here to talk about democracy, and you're bringing artists onto your platform in this container to talk about it. And I think that's important. Like, just like in the 80s when they had, World Live and, all these different Live Aid and like all those
Era the World
100. And it was big and it worked and people got it and they understood. But that's because they were like, this is what we're doing. This is the expectation around it. And this is why everyone's here. They give all those artists individually, if social media were around back then, just started talking on their own about it, it would just feel very, misunderstood by the fans. It would feel very like, stop telling me what to do type thing. But when you're having an event and the messaging and the movement is the focus, and you're having the artists come support the movement, that's different. That helps people understand, okay, I'm coming at this because I want to support this movement. And wow, look at these artists here who I love, or I'll meet new artists and learn about other artists who are also part of this movement. Now you're building a community here, rather than every artist for themselves trying to take their communities where the fans are going to them for a different specific reason. It's all about expectations and why fans are going certain places. Like, I could love, like, for instance, I love crime shows. Like, I love crime shows. I love watching them. I also love Broadway and going to Broadway shows. But if I went to a Broadway show and then all of a sudden, like, the curtains open and it was like a crime detective show all of a sudden, okay, but I bought a ticket for a Broadway show. Like, I could still enjoy it, but then now I'm a little turned off already because it was like, that's not what I bought a ticket for. So it's understanding why people are showing up in your space. And I think artists, I mean, I know just from it being in the US, forget about the 80s, we are more divisive than we've ever been. And it's, you know, even just going out on a date with somebody can end in an argument of like, well, who do you support? Who do you support? And so people are using music to escape. A lot of people are using music to just get away from the constant, you know, sit down at a family dinner, or you go on a trip with people, or you go to work and it's no longer water cooler talk. It's, who are you voting for? What do you mean you're voting for that? I can't believe that. Like, are you vaccinated? You better, and everybody is just waiting to argue with you. And it's a lot. And so I think artists are afraid, well, I mean, it's like, you know, look at what's going on in Ukraine and Gaza. And there are these moments in the Congo. And there are these artists that I've spoken to them where they're like, I want to take a stand and I want to say, I don't believe in this. I believe in this. And I said, great, you can. They're like, but what if I insult somebody? What if I piss somebody off? What if I get canceled? What, like, all these what ifs. It's a big cancel culture out there, especially in America. And so artists, you've put all your time and effort into building these communities. They don't want to say, okay, I said one thing and now that community no longer trusts me, or half that community has left me. And what does that mean? It's very intimidating. And so I think it's wonderful to have a community of artists to say, okay, we're going to come together for this. And now you're not alone. You're not, you know, nobody, if they do attack you, we're all here. You know, it's like, it's power in numbers. I think that's the real key here.
Right. Okay. So we're going to encourage the artists that are feeling tense to sign up and join in on the national Twitch train and just be there. We don't know if we're going to move the needle at all, but we're just all going to show up, right?
And I think that's the difference. Your platform is bringing together a community of people who care about this message. It's different than their individual platform that might have different aspects for different reasons people are on their platform. And I think that's the key, that, you know, it's not as scary when you're doing this as a community to fight for a message.
Right. Well, you know what? I initially thought that I was just starting a new kind of music company. And it turns out to be a grassroots movement with a really cool business model behind it. So I'm happy to be leading with, with our values. Again, I think I'd spoken to you before and I said, my CEO mantra is build value on your values, because it seems to be that's the key to what we're doing. Yeah. And I'll just say that as an artist that is from the pre-internet era, and I don't mind aging myself this way. I mean, I'm used to doing like live festival shows on Earth Day for Greenpeace, for Amnesty International. Like, I'm used to those social justice things. And I'm really happy to be able to bring that back with Mostro. And yeah, this Music for Democracy is going to be one of many things that we'll be doing. Yeah, because we've got lots of stuff to fight for, and there's lots of good things, lots of good trouble to get into, as John Lewis would say. Anyway, yeah, and thanks a lot for inspiring this, because without the conversation, without uses, there'd be no Music for Democracy. And so let's hope that this turns into the big, beautiful thing that it could potentially be. Let's see.
Well, with you leading the helm, I have no doubt that it's going to be something amazing. So,
good. Yeah, and both of us, you're along for the ride. Believe me, this is
I'm here.
Yeah, okay, you're in. You're on board here. I'd just like to ask you about your whole career. What has been as far as rewarding experiences that you've had in your career? What's been one of the most rewarding experiences you've had when you've seen the impact you've had on artist careers?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, conversations like this is why I do it. I mean, the fact that something I said even stuck with you, something I said got you thinking about something else. I've always loved and been inspired by being in the background. I am not somebody. I tried talent shows when I was little. I tried, being in the musicals and stuff in high school, and I just wanted to throw up when I was the one in front. I don't want to be the one in front. I love being backstage, creating the props, talking with people about their choices on stage. Yeah, you should do this when you say this line, and oh my goodness, yeah, that would be great. Why don't you try it out this way? I love working with creative people. I love helping them figure it out, get out of their own head for a second and piece together the puzzle or create the puzzle from scratch. That's what gets me so excited. And I love being able to watch people and know, okay, I helped with even the slightest bit of that. I'm a part of it, but I also don't have to be the one in front of everybody doing it. That to me is so exciting, and knowing that I have that person's respect. I don't need the whole audience knowing that I had any part of it. The people I respect are the creators who have the courage to put themselves out there. And when they show me thanks or respect or camaraderie or collaboration, I'm okay, thank you, thanks, appreciate that. I just love that. I love building with people. I love being a soundboard for people. And that really has been
you were talking about how much you love behind the scenes and not
but that's really been it. I mean, I really just get such a high off of it, of just knowing wow, they went off and did that, and I helped them clear the cobwebs so that they could do that. That's huge. That's what I love the most.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to thank you or curse you on September 2nd after that. And then you inspired me to create this thing. Because I'm wait a second. It is a good idea.
Why did you tell me to do that?
Yeah. No, I believe me. You're a very wise woman. Folks, you heard it here from me. Yes, Suz Paulinski is a very wise woman. And I followed her sage advice for years. And that this event is definitely...
It's going to be awesome.
Oh, I hope so. So yeah, and thanks so much for inspiring that. I want to wrap up by asking you, in the realm of everything that we've been talking about, what would be your advice to artists today? Mental health, just do you have any kind of parting things to say, considering all the pressures out these days?
Yeah, I would say, and I can speak from experience on this more than probably anything that I teach, is walk the talk of mental health. Put yourself first, be a little selfish, because it's frightening. I think as musicians and as creatives, we're kind of trained to give and share everything that's in here. And, when you start to struggle or feel pain, there's that instinct to then share more, because that's where the great art comes from. And it's yes, and that can't really be shared properly if, again, you're sharing a wound and not a scar. Like, share the scars. Don't share the wounds. Don't feel like you have to share in real time everything you're going through, because you need time to process that. And the processing can be beneficial for your art. And the taking it in and really sitting with it can help you decide what you want to do with your art. And, I respect people. If you want to share it in real time, if that's your thing, hey, go for it. But it's not sustainable. And so, I think for myself, I burnt out in the early aughts. I continued to burn out all through my 20s. Didn't really take anybody's advice to slow down and really process anything that's happened. And then right before I turned 30, I got a chronic illness and I was forced to slow down, but then the Rockstar Advocate came out of it. And there was such a beautiful building of this thing that I'm so proud of, when all my other businesses that I tried did not go anywhere, because I finally slowed down, because I was finally able to understand the purpose of what I was doing. And I was able to sustain that for almost 10 years. But then when life started really lifing last year, I hit burnout pretty quickly because of all these different life changes that I was going through. And taking a step back in January was the best thing I did for myself. I definitely wake up some days going, oh my God, like, I have to come back. I'm coming back, right? Well, I have to bring these things back. Oh my God, I let everybody down. Why did I step back? Oh my goodness. And I still get messages from people, and having conversations with you and knowing, like, okay, just because I'm taking a break doesn't mean I've just stopped being helpful to people. Doesn't mean that, like, people have forgotten, the work that I've done. It's okay to live my life. And I'm going to come back with more support that I'm able to give people, because I'll be okay. And I'm healing right now with things that I had to heal from. And so, every time I have that panic, just being able to then refocus on taking care of myself already gives me more inspiration for how I can help other people when I'm ready to come back in the fall. And so I think it's important for artists to trust that all of this is a trust exercise. And so remind yourself of it as you start to get anxiety and you start to think, oh my goodness, the wheel is moving so fast. You can jump off the wheel for a second. And then it's kind of like double Dutch. Like, you can hop back into it when you've, like, taken some water and done some deep breaths and, like, really grounded yourself again. And it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Absolutely. Amen to that. 100% all day.
Self-love, guys. I'm in the self-love club.
Self-love club. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Target.
President, founder, eternal member. All of the above. Awesome. Thank you so much, Suz.
Thank you.
This is awesome. One last huge thanks to Suz Paulinski. Her insights and dedication to creating a balanced and supportive environment for artists are truly inspiring. To our listeners, thank you for tuning into the Mostro Podcast. We hope today's discussion not only enlightened you, but also inspired you to think about how you can participate in shaping a more engaged and responsible world. Don't forget to join us at Music for Democracy and keep making your voice heard. Until next time, keep rocking and redefine the hustle in your own unique way. Remember, you can find all episodes of our podcast on your favorite streaming platform. Subscribe, leave us a review, and let us know what you think. Catch you on the next episode.